Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Our first story about a man who found an interesting way to rent a house a year longer. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Inept property management company gets what it deserves. A long time ago, no, just 20 years ago, in a galaxy far, far away, no, just 5 streets over, I rented a nice big flat in a nice old fixed-up house. House was foreclosed, but the stupid property management company that managed it for the bank did everything wrong. First of all, it didn't notify me of the change of landlord, so I kept paying the rent to the old landlord who did not cash the checks. After 6 months, I get sued for not paying rent. In court, when it's my turn to speak, I ask, "Who the F are you? My lease says Mr. So-and-so, and you're not him." They could not produce proof that they officially notified of the rent transfer. "Case dismissed," said the judge. Of course, I received the proper rent transfer pronto after that. Oh well, I was stupid and young at the time. I didn't think it could be that when the registered mail came in, and I stupidly took it. It was nice while it lasted, but still 6 months rent-free. Then the stupid property management decided to sell the house for the bank. It's one of those typical Montreal houses with the big stairs outside, and they put the "for sale" sign on my stair. At workplace, I printed a huge sold sign on the Dayglow crack and peel, and when I came home late at night, I stuck one on the "for sale" sign. Looks totally official. It takes them 4 to 5 weeks to notice the sold sticker, and they scrape it off. Of course, 2 to 3 days later, another sold sticker goes up and stays for another 3 to 4 weeks. Rinse, lather, and repeat. It took the B-turds 9 months to sell the house. And our second story. The Old Man and the Locomotive. Background. So, some time ago, 2012, one of my customers was a certain railway. This story was told to me by the old man that came in from that railway to run parts and place orders. He didn't like to use the phone, always in person. He even gave me the gate code so I could wander around unsupervised on the weekends, which I did, and it was amazing. Anyways, this man was long retired, mid-80s, but he hated being retired, so went back to work to do orders and parts. He brought a helper with him for anything heavy, and a yak for as long as you'd let him. He still worked for the railroad for fun. He loved it. It was his life. No kids, never married. I'd say the railway was his wife. Learned many fascinating things from him, but I'll share 2 here. The first is that they made everything for these trains. I mean it when I say everything. Foundry and lumber mill, from the castings for the locomotives and its internal and external parts and wheels to the woodworking for the seating, dining cars, plates, forks, knives, front to back, everything, all done in-house. They lived there. Housing and stores and everything. Its own city. Because of this, no one but the yard personnel doing the work and the operators really knew much about how anything is made. This is highly relevant. The other is that they never threw any of that stuff away. Even as they developed newer and better models, it's all buried on site at those yards. It's a literal train graveyard and a time capsule. Whole locomotives and cars were buried, all the things they used to build them too. Huge pits. Have seen. Not relevant, just interesting. Background. This takes place in his youth, when he was fairly new to the railway and an apprentice back in the 1940s. He was apprenticed to a man who had been with this railway since the 1800s. He didn't say how old he was at the time, or if he did, I don't remember, but here goes. He told me that back then he lived at the railway. The railway had housing for the workers, and him and his master were pretty much joined at the hip. He said it's like having your super experienced supervisor who's also your neighbor, and your houses share common facilities, so you usually eat together too. His master is a few years from retirement at this point. One day, his master is approached by an internal group from the same railway, but from very far away. The company's throwing a large event, and for this event, they've restored a very old unit to show off. The problem is that after restoring the engine, while it's cooling down, it's seized. They've torn it apart twice, can find nothing wrong with it, put it back together, same thing both times while cooling off, seizes. They are running out of time, hence them tracking down his master. His master is the last employee left they can find that still operated one of these things actively. The locomotive they restored was previously active many years before retirement. It should work fine. They want him to travel out of state to their yard to help diagnose the thing. He says he already knows the problem. He tells them he can simply give them directions, but they solidly refuse. He must go in person. He asks for $500. Going on this trip is going to put him way behind, and it's a long trip. He wants compensation. They refuse to pay him anything close to it, and he refuses to go. They leave. A couple weeks later, they come back. They've rebuilt it a third time, and it's still seized. They're coming up on the date of the event, and they are in panic mode, having heavily advertised the appearance of this locomotive for the event. This time he says $600 and nice accommodations for the trip, all paid, as in the company will foot bills for nicer food/hotel, and all time on the road is on the clock. They, visiting group, agree without batting an eye this time. This is going to save them from a major embarrassment. He makes them take apprentice with for assistance, which they didn't even argue with. He told me they even had a driver to take them, packed, and they left the same day. Took their regular tool bags and nothing special. He said it was a 2-day ride up, and they stopped at the nicest places they could for meals, stayed in nice hotels. Finally, they make it to the rail yard. Several very anxious people waiting for his input. The locomotive has not been touched since they last put it together. The first thing he does is grab his caliper, walks down both sides of the locomotive, taking measurements and making occasional markings. Then he has them fire it up. It, of course, runs fine. He repeats his first steps, and he has them cool it down. Sure enough, as it's towards the end of cooling down, cling, the sound of the engine seizing. The old man telling me this always yells this part and made me smile. Cue mass panic by local guys. It cannot be rebuilt again this time. Master, on the other hand, walks the same route along the engine, making a third round of measurements and markings. He then requests a sledge from the locals, grabs the sledge, and walks the engine again, this time giving a solid whack in certain marked areas. He repeats it a few times on each side. Master, try it now. It turns over freely. Master, do that, hammer, on there, markings, every time. Said the other group was a bit shocked but thrilled, and then requested he write down what he did, like he offered in the first place. The trick here was that in all the in-house work they did, with the early units, every engine was unique. They had relatively poor control of the metals and casting in general. Differences in the molds and castings created different deformities in the cylinders. Bad metallurgical control back then made large differences in voids and inclusions in the metal, and as it was cooling, the differences in expansion would cause the pistons to catch. You had to know the engines, judge the differences in the casting by the color of the metal, and know where it lay cold and hot. Then once you figured out where it was stuck, you had to break it loose, banging on it from the outside at that area. Each engine its own creature. Later in production, the technologies and techniques matured, as did the metallurgy, and it became a non-issue and everyone forgot. So, he got his only ever paid vacation, and his master got a nice fat bonus for an hour and a half of work, all because they wouldn't accept him writing down to measure it a few times, then beat on it in the odd spots, which was the gist of the written instructions he left behind afterwards. Nope, they said he had to do it himself. And he did, all the way to the bank. And our last story. No insurance scam for you. I work at a cheap chain restaurant in a small town that most of the local high school kids work at. One day, my friend comes in all flustered because she just rear-ended a lady at the stoplight around the corner. Nothing too serious, just a dent. I think the police report said she was going 5 miles per hour as she was slowing down to stop before turning. Friend fully admits she wasn't paying attention, but is upset because the other lady clearly was going to make this a huge deal. She refused to talk to my friend before the cops got there. When friend tried to give her insurance info, immediately complained of a sore back and neck when the cops showed up and demanded medical attention. As an aside, I can sort of understand this where I live, as you have to see a doctor within a certain amount of time to make an insurance claim. However, according to my friend, her attitude was completely off about it, and especially being that my friend was openly taking responsibility for the matter wasn't needed. Anyways, fast forward a few days. Update is that lady refused what her insurance company offered and hired a lawyer to sue for more money to cover intense pain and traumatic suffering. Essentially, my friend had really good insurance, which is nice if you want to make sure that you're covered, but then can provoke people to sue your insurance company for the full $50,000 amount. I think my friend's max coverage was $100,000. We're complaining about what a rude lady this is when a busboy who goes to the local high school says, "Oh, my cheer coach said she was in an accident on X day," same as my friend's. We laugh about small town syndrome and how weird it would be if it was the same lady. Looked up the staff on high school website, and sure enough, the coach is the same woman. We then tell the guy the next day how much she's suing the friend for, and he says, "Wow, that's a lot." And she told us that she's not even hurt, and she takes off her neck brace before practice and goes through the full routines with us. So, I don't know the lady's personal medical info, but clearly your pain isn't that intense if you're doing cartwheels and backflips and not even wearing the neck brace. So I paid our coworker $25 to take photos or videos of their next practice with her in it. I give them to friend sends them to insurance company. They were very interested in them. As far as I recall, the lady lost the lawsuit, ended up with less money than what they originally offered, as they now didn't offer anything for medical care, and even then had to handle with being charged for insurance fraud. The outcome of which I don't know. And again, the insurance company made an initial claim offer to cover the minor damage to the car and basic medical care to cover checkups for the whiplash, with the option for her to bill them or ask for more money if it did progress to something more serious. But no, she figured it was her money and she wanted it now and tried to pull a scam which would have skyrocketed my friend's insurance premiums had she gotten the full amount. Hey guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.